Live. We are on episode 16.00 of Heal In, Gift of Love. Tonight we're going to read from Robert Ingram's work on the United States of America that shows throughout history there was a committed faction that were opposed to the evil empire of the day. Now you may say, what does that mean? They were opposed to slavery. And for instance, the man on the $10 bill was shot and killed because he was anti-slavery. His son was lured into a duel just before that, and he convinced George Washington to free his slaves in a secret provision of his will upon Martha Washington's death, because Martha Washington, of course, was part of a very wealthy, if not the wealthiest family, perhaps beside the Carrolls in the colonies, and they wanted their slaves. So Robert E. Lee, a very similar case, he still got slaves. What is he thinking? Confederacy secedes. Are they really oriented towards freedom? Well, no. No, only for the white ruling class that have property. Not for the working class whites. They don't care about them. And then it should be obvious. So why would anybody want to go around, how difficult? You proclaim the Confederacy, as some of the populists do, is better or superior to the original U.S. Constitution. And they claim that the Confederacy, based on the Articles of Confederation, was the real thing. What happens if you're black and you're enslaved, or you're just black now? You're looking at everything and saying, what are they talking about? So I would like to run for office one day, be president of the United States, if not janitor on the USS Starship Shamanic Mutiny. From whence I was sent, I was in the future where we have world peace, and I pinched my superior's office for some sex tools, and then I pinched her nipples too hard. This is the captain of the ship, Emanuela. So she'll live until 2103, according to my visionary experience. Now let's just get to the point. We're going to read from Robert Ingram's book. Who is that? He's not an academic. This is not an academic exercise, although I would say it's better than an academic. Okay? New Birth of Freedom. Robert Ingram. He has lengthy articles discussing how there was a group in New York City around Hamilton, Philip Schuyler, Alexander Hamilton, then the South Carolina friend he had, Henry Lawrence. They were all anti-slavery, and there was a associate of Jefferson in Virginia who freed his slaves upon his death. Thomas Jefferson, who coined the Declaration's life, liberty. No, he did not. That was from John Locke, life and liberty. Government's protected to protect life, liberty, and property in John Locke. That was about 100 years before Jefferson. Everything is Civil War. And what does property include for Locke? Slaves. And he wrote a prototype for a constitution. Thank God it wasn't adopted for South Carolina. They had Leetman, Leetman, who were permanently disenfranchised in a sense, and they would remain the serfs. On the farm, is that what you want? What happens if you're not wealthy, but you're intelligent? Does that matter? Maybe you could pass some tests, but my God, where are you going to go? You wouldn't like yourself. And then the elite, in their books, for instance, President Obama had an advisor, top advisor, became mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel. His brother Ezekiel Emanuel is a doctor who talks of this and talks about essentially euthanizing so that we don't go overboard, spending ourselves into debt. I mean, this is insane. We should take care of everybody up until the time that they pass. That's it, period. It'll pay for itself, because people will have a chance to really get to know their parents or whoever for whom they're caring will know. Rest assured, nobody's going to trick them. and universal health care for all. Now, if you're wealthy, you can just go, you go anywhere. Go to Switzerland, like Keith Richards, and get a fresh refill of the blood that you've destroyed with your stupid addiction to heroin. But I don't blame him. I'm sure it's very enjoyable. Now, this book is a classic now, in my mind, but it's simply a series of articles that I've read very carefully. We're talking 15-page articles that are in-depth research, like an academic treatise, except insofar that they would be accepted. Well, no, not really. The professorial elite do not credit Lyndon LaRouche for being not only universally moral and ahead of them, but making them obsolete. The colleges, Columbia, I get accepted in 81. I'm going to go. My grandfather promised to pay for college. Don't worry about college. He's a self-made millionaire, concrete construction. He finds out it's $13,000 plus, I think, food. Tuition, room and board, or room. Well, you had to buy the meal plan the first semester, but it was $13,000. And long story short, by the spring of the following year, I was taking time off. I could not stand the fact that they didn't want me to go, and they were paying for it against their will, and that they'd somehow been conned, and I thought, they're entitled to that. And then, I'm falling asleep. Now, let's wake up and get into this. We have a dilemma. We have done what everybody does. We've misplaced our glasses. I cannot move. Oh, there we go. Wow, right in front of me. They probably could have been on my face, and I would have thought I'd misplaced them. We had a good day. Now, let's switcheroo. Red in the background, and we're going to start some beautiful music. Today's Mandala of the Precious Lamp, Matri. Just stare at that a little bit. You can use it as a meditation aid. This is Tibetan Buddhism Great Perfection, Dzogchen, D-Z-O-G-C-H-E-N teachings, and you meditate on mandalas. They're all part of stilling the mind and accessing the timeless realm, even while your body here, or when you pass from the body after your human death, you may be able to manifest that. Now, I didn't get permission from Robert, but he knows that I'm doing this, so it's kind of taken for granted. Look, what's he going to do? Call me and say, "Stop trying to sell my book"? Now, what's the difference between Joe Biden and Abraham Lincoln? Everything. Nobody wanted Lincoln to prosecute the war in the way they did, but he was a committed anti-slavery president. The first we'd had elected since Andrew Jackson, and he was only the one-termer. Afterward, I got up at 2:15 this afternoon. It was exhausting. Trying to bounce back. We had a rough Halloween, and I got asked to leave. I'm not sure that'll happen. I don't think it will. But good grief, there's a person here that came back stinking. Fucking D-R-U. Boop, boop. You can figure it out. They're soused. Okay, so I had a beer. I'm going to have some beer now. Do I sound like I'm drunk? Would you throw me out? Why don't you write cards and letters of recommendation for the the one owner, not my companion who goes by an R name with an O. But the man that's Russ. Just write Russ, 2103 Staples Avenue. That's Russ, R-U-S-S, 2103 Staples Avenue, Key West, 33040. And say, I just encountered Paul's video and I found it most helpful. And I can't believe that you would be throwing him out when you have another person there that's drinking much more and not really producing much in the way of great joy in others. I've appreciated how hard it is to do these shows. And I know that people are happy with it. That's only because they told me so. All right. Now, remember, today is November 11th. We're moving towards what? The winter solstice, which corresponds to the holidays of Christmas. Yuletide spirit. I would say Merry the 4th of July to spirit of freedom forevermore, to the Yuletide spirit, the sharing. That's compassion, and then freedom is the orientation or the method. So the method and wisdom the Buddhists talk about, you could say that, I mean, you might just say, look, we had to write it down first before we could really get people to follow it. But the point is, the kind of people that moved over here were all interested in this. Initially, I'm not sure now, and my co-host, or primary host, the founder of A Strange Universe, show that's been shut down, Sean David Morton, he did a 94 reading called the Vajra Chronicles in front of an audience of people in the hundreds in Key West, and they exercised or something. There was some kind of peculiarity about the timing. And he wanted to avoid any problems with crowds, and he did a lecture, and it worked well. No, wait a second. It wasn't in Key West, but the point is, it was called the Vajra Chronicles. He said the United States would be dismembered no more. We would defeat the Chinese. They would invade through Alaska, come on down the coast, go to Colorado, outside of Denver. They'd be finally turned back. I have a feeling that Trump is still in a factional dispute with Biden and considered himself president-elect, or acting president that was reelected, and behind the scenes they all know this, but on the outer world there's nothing but confusion. So, all right, we're at 12 minutes. I'm just banging it away, and I'm not even reading, and I'm not sure that I'm as good as gold right now. I mean, think about it. Somebody took the time, like Robert Ingraham, Ingraham. For the Liberty Roof movement, you can look it up on the internet. And he's saying Virginia declares war at page 121. The slave power assault on Alexander Hamilton began from the day that Washington took office, just as Hamilton, Jay, and Morris were determined to complete the work of the Constitutional Convention to create a more perfect union. The Virginia complex was insanely intent on destroying Hamilton, breaking the influence of New York powers on the future generation, isolating Washington, and eventually seizing power for themselves. I think I'd better reread this paragraph. In other words, this work is talking of New Birth of Freedom. It's talking about how there were many people left behind by the original founding. And John Locke's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Well, how did Jefferson put it, pursuit of happiness? He was told to by Benjamin Franklin, who read and with James Logan had the largest library in the colonies in Philadelphia. At James Logan's house, the Junto, Junto, and he discovered electricity, which vindicated Leibniz, who said there would be a subtle fluid filling all space because God had made the best of all possible worlds, and he would not limit, he would not, using the least ratio principle, it would be easier if everything was filled with this subtle fluid rather than void and hard atoms and then action over a distance that can't be explained. Well, Newton was dead wrong. His calculus students were non-existent, and Leibniz's students invented modern mathematics. He died in 1716 due to the genealogy of the house of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha that waited until now to tell me. And in high school, I think you're allowed to think the United States was founded with this slavery, and it's really all it was. No, the people that came here originally, like John Winthrop, looking for this, establish a special place. They don't want slaves. They don't want it ruined. They don't want it corrupted, contaminated. One of my friends was a direct descendant of the Mathers. Lenny Mather in Boston, cab driver, does really well. Sometimes he gets a huge check, I suppose. But I think they're just scraping by. It's not busy, but it's busy enough. And interestingly, outside of Key West, there's a whole crew that live on a deserted island, Christmas Tree Island. And they've been left alone, relatively speaking. And one of my friends is the ringleader. And I'm not mentioning their name, and I don't want to get everybody in trouble, but I'm carefully listening to the stories as they keep falling out. Boy, would I love to be over there with electricity and never come back. Boy, would I love to go to Costa Rica and never come back. I loved it there on the West Coast at Montezuma, Victoras Kolvinska's house, who wrote in the 70s, Survival into the 20th Century. The book looks like a coloring book, but it's a genius level demonstration of my testing of whether or not the principles of the Declaration of Independence were applied in real life. And Benjamin Franklin, well, he let them not make it anti-slavery in the way that I would suggest, and c'est la vie. Fought that horrible war, and it didn't solve a thing, and it made everybody distrust blacks all the more if they were upper-class whites, and if they were, basically you get the idea. Now, would you say that George Soros is running everything? I was told this by another radio host who interviewed me last night. It's not what you think, of course, but it's also the people that are full public view. He also had the outrageous brass to say that Lindsey Graham had fucked repeatedly in many different instances. President Obama, while he's president, that's why he was such a sellout for the goddamn war on humanity. Whoa, the war on terror. Huh. Jesus Christ. People know how corrupt it is. George W. Bush was gay. He had a lover come to the White House. Jeff Cannon. He's recorded as logging in, but it was not recorded as logging out. So where did he go? Most likely to play with George Bush and let him get a blowjob from George Bush. And Bill Clinton, of course, is involved with the CIA. Him and Hillary were a covert couple. And Ross Perot entered the election, and lo and behold, the Bushes are screwed. HW loses re-election. Good. Bill Clinton could have turned from the good side. We were very prosperous in a way, but it was really paper. It's kind of like this. This is how our dollar works. Take our dollar and give us your junk, or else we'll overthrow your government, and makes another leader there accept the dollar. And we'll just print dollars, and we won't really have to work too hard if we have them. That's not cool. You still got to clean up after yourself, and there's many instances here where I've encountered people that do not understand how to clean. They're slow as molasses. Anyway, you're welcome to come up. Anybody. Go down. Why?